look what I got from the library today. Still got that on there. Library drive up because we're being very safe right now. Hawthorne short stories. I asked to check this out specifically for one very special short story. And it's special because it's actually the first text I ever used when I was learning about how do I incorporate different excerpts from stories to help students improve their writing and teach grammar in a way that was not a bunch of worksheets and diagramming, where it's a little bit more embedded and useful. Grammar in the wild, you could call it. So the story in here, I think you can probably find this short story online for free somewhere. Hawthorne's pretty old, right? If you go on, what is it, the Gutenberg website and find the text. But I like holding the book when I share with you, and so that's why I wanted to go check it out. And the short story in here, in this anthology, that I want to talk about is Dr. Heidegger's Experiment. And in this, Hawthorne's short stories from, I don't know how old this book is. Doesn't that sound nice, just the turning of pages? Yeah. Copyright 1946. Renewed in 1973. Well, how about that? Looks untouched, but Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, that short story, is page 99. Flip to it here. And here's the thing, I'm not reading the whole story. There's actually one paragraph that I think is important to do an activity to teach students on how to improve their inferencing skills. And then there's one sentence that I like to analyze with students in order to help them with their grammar skills. And then there's number 3, a third activity that I like to do to get to know my students better. So this is something that when I first did, it was my go-to day one activity. I know a lot of people like to start school year and they'll do something like, well, the first day of school, we just go over rules and procedures. Boring, especially when you're in high school. Like, I think students should know how to behave appropriately. And I always use, was it Jim Burke's rule that you can do anything you want in my classroom as long as you're not hindering the learning of others. It's a very simple one, and it's what I always use, and I think you can get that done within 10 seconds. Usually no questions asked about that. Students understand what you mean by that. And so then we move on and we do an actual activity. And so I say, today, welcome to your freshman year of high school. We're gonna do diction analysis. And it sounds so scary. And it's not, especially when you use Nathaniel Hawthorne. But even Hawthorne, it's like a name they probably have heard. It's like, oh, this is one of those old dead white guys. And that sounds really hard, diction analysis. I can't believe this is the first day of school. This is inhumane. And it freaks them out, and I love it. Because it's really easy. And when you walk them through it properly, they get this sense where, oh wow, I can do it. Maybe I can make it through high school, because they feel that success. And that's the whole point of it, is that you want to make them feel successful. So in Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, let me see, the way it's laid out in here, we have one long paragraph, a second shorter paragraph, and then it's the third paragraph that I want to focus on, this third long paragraph here. Oh yeah, I have like a whole slide deck that can like take you through this process that I've used with students, and you can go to our Teachers Pay Teachers store and download it. I'll put it up there, but let me get into the paragraph where I focus on, and you don't have to use the whole paragraph, but I guess it's up to you if you want to, because it's a lengthy paragraph, that third paragraph. So if you want to challenge the reading stamina, it's good to read. But it starts off with, here we go. If all stories were true, Dr. Heidegger's study must have been a very curious place. It was a dim, old-fashioned chamber, festooned with cobwebs and besprinkled with antique dust. That second sentence, that's the one you want them to copy into writer's notebooks. That's the one you want to type out on the screen if you're doing like a Zoom classroom or Google Classroom, or even if you're pretty savvy, a Flipgrid classroom. That's the sentence you want them to focus on, okay? We'll keep reading, or have the students keep reading to themselves if you want to do it that way. like I said, I think the copyright on this, you're probably safe. I think it's on Gutenberg, which means they're copyright friendly, especially in these trying times. I don't think Hawthorne's going to be mad at you. But around the wall stood several oaken bookcases, the lower shelves of which were filled with rows of gigantic folios and black letter quartos, and the upper and little parchment-covered duodecimos. Over the central bookcase was a bronze bust of Hippocrates, with which, according to some authorities, Dr. Heidegger was accustomed to hold consultations in all difficult cases of his practice. So it goes on like this, and it's a very long paragraph just describing this room that Dr. Heidegger lives in and works in. And you hear about books, and you hear about him talking to the statues, and the whole point is to ask the students, tell me everything you know about the character Dr. Heidegger. That's the inferencing skill. So they have to infer based on the description of this room what they know about him. I guess they know he's a doctor, but if he's talking to statues, it might be a little cuckoo, it might be a little crazy doctor, or he's at least eccentric. You'll find as you keep reading that he's a little messy. He's a messy doctor. So what does that say about him? Is that a doctor you want to go to if they're messy? I know you see all those like ridiculous, oh, it makes me so mad when I see those ridiculous memes. You know, Facebook's full of lies, but those memes about, hey, if you're a messy person, if your desk is messy, that means you're creative or you're a genius. No, that just means you're messy. And I don't want to live with you. So, bad roommate, right? And oh yeah, the slide deck will have my essential questions I use with students when I have them read this. I usually assign them to read this by themselves and then discuss it with a partner, which you can do in Zoom. You can have them put them in fake rooms and discuss it if you're doing it virtually, or at least give their first impression of it, and then read it a second time with those two key questions in mind. So that's like the first activity you do with it. Then what you want to do is go back to that second sentence that I had you copy down in your notebooks or have you put on display if you're teaching virtually. That sentence that begins with, it was a dim, old-fashioned chamber festooned with cobwebs and besprinkled with antique dust. So write that out, but leave lots of spaces, like double space it. So the students are going to go through and actually identify what each word is as far as how it's being used in the sentence. So as for instance, in that sentence that we're focusing on, it was a dim, old-fashioned chamber. So the word it, we're going to focus on that together, and you're going to model this first, I do, we do, you do, that kind of thing. So I'm going to tell you what it is as far as literary terms. So it, in the way it's used in this sentence, is two things. It functions as two things. First, it is the subject of the sentence, and so it refers to the object, which if we keep reading, it was a dim, old-fashioned chamber. So I circle it because it's the subject, and I underline chamber because it is the object it's referring to. So the way it's being used in that way, it is a pronoun. So I mark it accordingly in my writer's notebook, or you have the students identify. So the next one, was. So was, what is that? It's a verb, and you can kind of show them a trick on this too. They could actually look it up on like dictionary.com. Oops, made a mistake. One thing I totally forgot to mention that would be really helpful, I think, for students is, I have these like little cheat sheets that I give them. I have one for like tone words, and I have one for other grammatical things and literary terms. But yeah, give them one to help them with the diction analysis too, and then they can use that as a cheat sheet. Only after you test them first. Like you give them a sum and then have them try on their own from what they recall of their knowledge of like nouns and what's a verb and what's an adjective. But then give them one to keep in their writer's notebook, or give them one to keep in their digital notebook that they can use as a reference, and then do more of these types of activities with other sentences. Maybe even send them out to find a really cool sentence that's super long or super beautiful, or it's meaningful for them in some way, and have them, oh, I gotta pick up my baby's waking up, or have them do another diction analysis on their own. They could use like lyrics from a song. Hey, T Swift's got some beautiful lyrics. And hey, imagine them doing some diction analysis to T Swift or whatever the kids are listening to these days. Ed Sheeran, he's still around, right? Popular? I like him. Anyways, so that is also available on our Teachers Pay Teachers page. So we got pronoun followed by a verb, and then the letter A. It was A. So A, what is that? It is an article. And what's funny is a lot of students don't know what articles are. And so this is like the first time they know, like, oh, I didn't know there was a term that went with that. Like, yeah, that's an article. And then dim, it's an adjective, and most of them usually get that. Then we have them do that together. You might start those first 3 words, and then together you say it all out as a class. Okay, all together now. Old-fashioned. What is that? Is that a verb? No. Is that a noun? No. Is it an adjective? Uh-huh. It is an adjective. And I would do a couple more before I just let them try on their own. Now try to fill that out on your own on your paper, and then we're going to report out in our virtual classroom and identify that whole sentence. So that's 2 activities. Let's do a third one real quick. So the third one is a good get to know you activity. So you have the whole sentence listed out here, identified what every word is. You count how many words are in the sentence. And let's see, count it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 words? Hope I'm counting that right, counting off my phone, looking at my slides. And then it's kind of like, it's fun to have a discussion if you have the time, whether you count old-fashioned as 1 word or 2. I count it as 1 because it's got that hyphen. Then you can have a discussion about hyphens. There's a lot you can do with this one sentence, right? It's pretty cool. Grammar is awesome. And so what you'll say is, okay, students, I want you to write a sentence, and some people give them leeway. I want you to write a 14-word sentence describing your room. And if you want to make it super strict, like raise it just that next level, they have to use the same structure as Hawthorne. So they have to start with a pronoun, followed by a verb, followed by an article, followed by and 2 adjectives, and then the noun. See what I did there? And then they're gonna follow the rest in that same structure. And it's a struggle, but you get really creative sentences. They have to really stretch their minds thinking of some really cool adjectives and verbs. Like I really like in the second part of the sentence, be sprinkled is a really tricky word. Like only a few of them will get like, oh, be sprinkled, that's a verb. So what's a synonym for be sprinkled that I could use to describe my room? And they will get really creative with that. Send them a link to thesaurus.com to help them out. And I think that's a fun way to learn, like, what is their environment? Are they a neat person? What can you infer about their personality? Or when they read their sentence, have people go around and say, what can they infer about your colleague, your fellow student's personality? It's a fun activity. So I'm happy to finally share that. It's the whole reason I checked this book out, is just to talk about basically 1 sentence. But the whole short story is fun. And that's a good day 1 activity that you can do virtually or in person. It's very flexible. And it's still a very authentic, literary way of teaching writing and reading. So that's it. I hope you're doing well. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your students, and take care of each other. Cheers.